Monday, August 29th, 2005. In New Orleans, thousands of residents are trapped in their attics and on rooftops by the floodwaters of Hurricane Katrina. With limited resources, the U.S. Coast Guard is rescuing people at the rate of 25 per hour. But the more than 100,000 victims cannot be handled by one agency alone. In the city's lower Ninth Ward, Times-Picayune news photographer Alex Brandon documents the efforts of the New Orleans Police Department SWAT team.
They just did incredible things. I mean, they rescued an awful lot of people.
But as early evening approaches, Brandon puts down his camera and joins Lieutenant Chris MANDRY in pulling people to safety.
And you just went and grabbed people and brought them back, We did that, I can't tell you how many times, until we got to Mrs. Rice.
At about 5 p.m., the SWAT team comes across a 61-year-old woman named Lois Rice. Most of Rice's family has climbed through a hole in the roof of her house, but Rice is a paraplegic and trapped in the attic.
We cut a hole, the same kind of size hole, about this big, with our chainsaw we did in all the other roofs we cut into to get people out.
It's clear that we can't pick her up any kind of way and that she certainly can't support her own weight.
And we're slipping in between the timbers and going into the water. I mean, I'm laughing about it because it's kind of humorous now. At the time, we were going out of our minds with frustration. We went and swam over to the house next door, rummaging through what's floating, found a ironing board, a metal ironing board.
We rolled her onto the metal ironing board, all the while balancing ourselves on the slats of her house.
Then, of course, she starts slipping down. It's a slope roof, and it's like, this can't get any worse. So we got her and managed to carry her and get her in a boat.
When he knows Rice is safe, Alex Brandon goes back to his other job.
In the picture of Mrs. Rice, I shot it because I was sitting right next to her. I'm kind of hanging on to her so she doesn't slide off that ironing board. And you can see the water, which is pretty at that point. You know, it's still pretty. And she's got a little bit of a smile on her face. But I'm so glad we got her out. I'm just so glad we got her out. And there were people like that all the time.
8 p.m. Lieutenant Colonel Keith LACAZE and his team of 62 wildlife and fisheries officers are 10 miles north in the New Orleans east section of the city. They've learned that thousands of people are stranded there as well.
Of course, they were panicked because they had power failure, they had children, there were older people, there were sick people. It very quickly became overwhelming. As soon as you could put boats into the water and start sending them out, they were coming back with maximum capacity of people that you could hold in a boat.
By 9 p.m., darkness blankets the city.
In that first probably 6 to 8 hours, we pulled out probably 300 people, the first 300 people that were pulled out. You know, when you think of a city with hundreds of thousands of people in it that's 80% underwater, deep water, and you're going to try to rescue them without electricity, with no fuel, no communications, it's hard.
Finally, around 1 a.m., after 12 hours of search and rescues, the New Orleans SWAT team runs out of fuel. The men are forced to stop and regroup.
You could still hear people yelling, "Help! Come back for me! Come back for me!"
The officers from the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries have not been working as long, and they started out better equipped. Captain Brian Clark and his men are able to pick up where the SWAT team left off.
We said, look, you know, we're just here to help. We're gonna pull as many people as we can. We're gonna work all through the night.
Thousands of people were still out there, and they were bringing them in as quickly as they could. And, you know, we had many more boats than they did.
We actually used spotlights and flashlights to work through the night rescuing people. You could see people on rooftops. You could turn your boat off, and you could hear them yelling from every direction. There were some people signaling with gunshots to let us know where they were.
There were power lines that were just above the surface of the water. There were all sorts of obstructions in the water. I had concern about officers, you know, being possibly electrocuted or getting in boating accidents, you know, or being thrown out of their boats.
of course, you have to think about safety. You know, you're no good to anybody as a rescue if you get hurt.